Hello, I'm Liam Anderson. Welcome to the Elevēo podcast, where we'll talk about all things speech analytics with Nicole Price, Elevēo's Director of Product Commercialization and Strategy. Just before we kick off with the show, can you tell us a little about yourself, please?
Hi, Liam. I'm so glad to be here today. I got my start operationalizing speech analytics about 7 years ago when I was with eBay, and then I moved to their sister company, eBay Inc., where I built their customer experience program and used speech analytics data to consult for our broad range of clients. Earlier this year, I was given the opportunity to join Elevēo and use my extensive experience to help drive a best-in-class workforce optimization toolset.
Wow. Well, with all that experience, I can tell we're in for a great discussion. So let's kick off. What can an advanced speech analytics solution do for a contact center?
I like to say to users that are considering using a tool like this that the possibilities are really endless and really only limited by the extent of your imagination. However, I think the most common use cases with speech analytics are for things like contact deflection, average handle time reduction, correcting agent behaviors, fighting fires that crop up in your contact center. Really, the possibilities are endless.
Tell me about contact deflection.
Contact deflection is really about assessing your customer's journey and then using that information to remediate self-help so that a customer doesn't actually have to contact customer care in the first place. So you're really looking for trends of contact types. What are the themes the customers are contacting you with? And how can you allow customers to better self-serve or even use automation like a bot to deflect those contacts from ever reaching customer care in the first place? This would lead to long-term customer loyalty by reducing customer effort, because really the majority of customers would much rather self-serve than contact customer care, unless it's a financial or healthcare matter. The other thing around contact deflection is that when you have something burning in your contact center, as I like to call it, it allows you to pivot with resources for your customers and agents much more quickly than if you were to wait for an agent or quality management teammate to say, hey, something's wrong.
Yeah, I can see that. That sounds really interesting. That reminds me of a case I encountered in the UK where we were searching for evidence of broken digital journeys where people call in because they use the website or app. How do you imagine someone could use advanced speech analytics to investigate that?
That's a perfect use case for speech analytics, especially if something that might be burning in your contact center. Something is working and then it's not working, and that drives unexpected volume, increases your cost per contact, reduces your margins, and so on. And those sorts of things are easily identified by looking for the phrases and words and themes that are associated with those types of contacts and looking to see, are they the top driver? Are they trending higher than they normally would? And then again, taking a look at the customer's experience with those particular drivers. What is their website journey? What are they struggling to find that causes them to call in or chat in? Um, is there something that hasn't been addressed by self-service? Is there something that could be better automated? What's causing the customer to have a high degree of effort? If you can solve for those things by identifying them through speech analytics, then you reduce your cost per contact, you improve first contact resolution, all of the key metrics and KPIs that are reviewed in a contact center, and define success.
Right. You mentioned firefighting. I always had the impression that speech analytics was something that took a long time to set up. How can speech be used to respond to problems quickly?
Yes, I think this is a big question that always comes up for new users with speech analytics, is that there's this misnomer that it takes a lot of effort to set it up and to get going and start deriving meaningful insight. But the great news is that speech analytics has really advanced in recent years, providing offerings that really reduce the need for business analysts to provide insight. So we're using things like auto clustering algorithms, which they proactively define themes for you without you having to do anything. We use things like phrase detection in your transcript. So what are your top trending phrases? We actually provide you with a phrase library that we've predefined, and these phrase library categories have been used in practical situations in the past, so we know that they work. And then, of course, most importantly, we give you a dashboard so that you can show the trending for all of those things.
I'm sure many of our listeners who are new to speech analytics are wondering how speech analytics works.
I think that's the basics, blocking and tackling, right? How does it work? So first, what we do is we take your audio contacts and we transcribe them. And the great news about transcribing them and providing you a transcript is that this text can be searched very much like you would do a Google search, and look for phrases and themes that are coming up through your search, things that you think you're looking for. The transcripts can also be run through standard data processing algorithms. And then you can also bring in your digital channel contacts. Again, going back to looking at the full end-to-end omni-channel customer journey, importing your digital channel contacts, while they won't be transcribed because they're already in that format, allows you to provide analysis on all of the channels, not just on phone. I would say that the alternative to this, and which you will see sometimes offered in speech analytics tools, is phonetics indexing. And what this means is that we're breaking down the respective words and phrases into those phonemes that construct the word. The problem with this is that this creates inaccuracies because you have things like accents, you have regional dialects, you have proprietary verbiage, you have a lot of things that can cause the phonemes to not be defined correctly, which then leads to inaccuracies. And in fact, I would say that in my experience, I've only seen phonetics indexing accurate about 20% of the time.
So is speech analytics something that just spots words and phrases?
No, I think the great news about this is providing context to what's happening. What are the words and phrases that you're finding? That's certainly important. But what's happening around those words and phrases, and lends additional insight to agent and customer behaviors. So things like the amount of silence can be detected. What is the tone of voice for either your speaker or your agent? How quickly are they speaking? We allow you to build Boolean queries, and we even offer things like what is the gender of your caller, or what is the potential age range of your customer if you really want to get targeted for things like marketing, although of course those things are more sensitive.
What can a user do if she wants to find out what people are actually saying about a certain subject, such as, for example, COVID-19, but she doesn't know all the key phrases?
Yeah, that's a great call out, because everybody who was using speech analytics last year was faced with this. All of a sudden, we had a pandemic that we needed to define in practical words and phrases that both the agents and the customers were using to refer to the pandemic and how it impacted everybody's respective business. So I think the easiest and probably most manual way of approaching this is simply by listening to contacts and, documenting all of the ways that your customers and your agents are referring to the topic at hand. But then, as I mentioned, we do have automated options such as those auto clustering algorithms, which really help you to not know anything about what you're looking for, and we're serving it up to you on a silver platter. It really helps you to get going much faster.
That's really interesting. Now, I've heard that you can automate the quality management process using speech analytics. How does that work?
Yeah, so the first thing that's most important in defining or switching your program from a manual to an automated quality management program is around ensuring that you've defined the behaviors that you know lead to successful KPI outcomes. What are the KPIs that are most important in your contact center, and what behaviors do you know drive those outcomes? And once you've defined those behaviors, how can you translate those behaviors into predefined categories of phrases? So, for example, you may be expecting your agents to use a free form greeting within the first 30 seconds of your contact. So you'll define all of the ways that agents could be saying those things or that you would deem to be appropriate greetings. You may also say, I expect the agents to use no more than X amount of silence on a given call. And so you're layering in that additional behavior. You're expecting X disclaimers to be given because it's a healthcare call. Is the agent providing that disclaimer in the right? So again, it's about defining all of the behaviors that you expect from your agents and then layering those behaviors in to essentially what we're defining as a complex category. And I know that sounds really complicated and scary, but we're here to help you define what that looks like if you're interested in moving forward.
Of course. One of the limitations of such systems is while they can spot words or phrases, detect emotion and acoustic parameters, they can't actually understand what the agent is saying. So you're going to need to listen to some calls manually to calibrate yourself against the system and keep refining the system's training. So
Yeah.
what are the business advantages of automating your QM processes?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point, Liam, which is that as exciting and advanced as all of this technology is, it's never going to do 100% of the work for you. And aside from manual or automated QM, you always have to check in and make sure that not only have you defined all of the ways that you could be looking for data, but that it's returning accurate results. And also listening to contacts allows you to understand additional subcontexts that maybe you hadn't predefined, or you're listening for additional things that you haven't predefined. But back to your question around automated QM, there are a lot of advantages to using this. I think the most impactful gain is really around the ability to score 100% or whatever percent you define of your agent's interactions. Historically, I'd say that manual evaluating maybe yields 1 to 3% on an annualized basis of an agent's contacts. And you have to consider that those contacts are then being coached back to the agent. But how do you know that that 1% or 2%, which is not statistically significant, is actually representative of that agent's behaviors? That could mean that you're coaching them on things that I would consider red herring coaching. It's something that crops up and then you coach them, but it doesn't impact their long-term behavior. It helps set them up for success because it's not really what their long-term trend is. So automated QM really helps you to identify what an agent's consistent opportunities are so that your coaching is as effective as possible. I'd also say that it helps you to keep your evaluating from being subjective, because I think oftentimes we hear the argument that manual QM evaluations are cherry picked or that a QM evaluator is out to get that agent. So again, that eliminates those arguments. But I think one of the most compelling business cases for automated QM is really around the potential to deprecate all or part of your manual evaluating staff. Just imagine if you could have your system accurately evaluating all of your agents' contacts all of the time. Then you take that staff that was doing the evaluations and you have them doing the call listening to the analytics, doing that subcontext listening that we were mentioning before. That's a really great and powerful way to shift your resources and to better support your business.
You make some really good points there. If a company is considering using speech analytics for the first time, what factors should they take into account?
I think the most important thing to start with is buy-in on both the financial investment and also how you're going to operationalize the outputs of the tool. You want to show that the financial investment can offset or can be offset by some of the outputs that you get. For example, speech analytics is very metric oriented, improving first contact resolution, cost per contact, average handle time. These are all financial metrics in the contact center. And so I always recommend, can we run a proof of concept to demonstrate financially and practically that the tool is going to have an impact on your business? Once you've completed this proof of concept, I'd say it's also incredibly important to build an analytics culture within your organization. You want to make sure that the data is reviewed regularly, that you're creating data visibility, that the value of the content of the data is there. Are your leaders looking at this information and doing something with it to make your business better, right? And a lot of the ways you can do that is by creating dashboards that reflect your everyday drivers and allow everybody to look at the data and slice it on an agent, team, and organizational level to see how it's impacting everybody individually. It's always about what's in it for me. So it's really about creating a culture of knowledge so that everyone in your organization understands not only how to navigate the dashboards and use the data, but also how they can reapply those findings to drive better customer experiences and agent experiences.
Yeah, I can see that. I really can. Okay, members of our audience are often looking for ways to get a return on investment. How can you make cost savings using speech analytics?
As we've mentioned before, speech analytics is very much tied to financial outputs in the contact center because of the metrics that speech analytics can impact. So the potential for cost reduction or avoidance is again really only limited by your imagination. But two very common use cases are around average handle time reduction, as well as deflecting contacts that could be serviced by a bot or by improving your self-service options. So in a very practical example, if you have a contact center with 100 agents and each agent costs $3,000 a month, then your total cost for that month is $300,000. By using speech analytics to identify high silence drivers, or things that are inefficient in the agent's process, things that they struggle to find knowledge articles on, you can reduce that silence percentage. And by reducing that silence percentage, you're in turn making your calls shorter and cheaper, which leads to, improvements in your cost per contact, your first contact resolution, contact deflection, and of course, most importantly, how much those agents cost you. Do you really need all of those agents? So going back to my experience, I saved eBay $1 million in year one of using speech analytics just by identifying high silence percentage contacts and the drivers for that silence, and then also what was driving dissatisfied callers. So just those two things alone yielded a massive, massive cost savings in 1 year.
Wow, $1 million. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, so what final thoughts would you like to leave in the minds of our audience today then, Nicole?
I would say be as creative as possible in the application of your speech analytics. Again, you're really only limited by the scope of your imagination. Make sure you get buy-in financially and also operationally, because it's really bringing everybody together, working together, using the data to make it successful and weave it into the fiber of your culture. And by doing that, you'll have very success. It's not going to be shelfware. You'll use it all the time, and you'll constantly be innovating and solving new business problems.
Right. So, Nicole, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. Fantastic insights. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, the pleasure is absolutely all mine. And I'll remind everybody that if you don't know where to start, we are absolutely here to help you.
Absolutely. And a big thank you to our audience for listening. Hope you'll tune in to the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Elevēo. Elevate every encounter.